All right, today we're going to be talking about the New Age agenda, and it's real. If you don't think it is, you've probably been psyoped, or at least you're in the phase where you think this stuff's really cool, which, I mean, it is for a while until it's not, and then you end up where everyone's a guru, everything is everything, nothing's nothing, we're all going to die, it doesn't matter, but we're love and light type shit. Well, you've came to the right place. You're here now. Be here now. So I guess I'm just gonna make this video based off the context of my spiritual journey, I guess, a little bit, my dabblings within the New Age movement. It's been a while, but this topic just keeps on coming up. And if there's any topic in particular that I could probably talk about for hours and hours and hours and do 50 really nuanced videos about, it's this one. But to be honest with you, this is one of the most boring topics to me to talk about because like I said, once you get past it and you see how not relevant it is to your daily life, you realize that it was all just a game. It was all a fairy tale. It's all stuff that you put inside your mind and thought was meaningful at the time and then ended up not being meaningful at all. And you're like, okay, what now? My whole life growing up, I felt like I was in a deep, dark shadow realm. Like, that's basically how my whole childhood sort of felt like. I had a decent childhood. It was fine. It's probably really typical, actually, except the only thing that was not typical was my dreams. And that's kind of where I get the name from, Raymond Dreamer, right? My dreams, you wouldn't even believe it if I told you. I'm not even going to talk about it. But the thing is, growing up, I had this darkness around me. I had these shadow beings follow me, or at least that's what I thought they were. I had all these problems consolidated, and they almost felt like I was being attacked cybernetically by these different dimensional beings in some other ether trying to like attack my soul or something. That's really how I felt like. Growing up, whether it's imagination or whatever, my whole life I felt like I had a spiritual problem. So growing up, when I started to find spiritual related information like New Age, you got to meditate, you got to heal your chakras, you got to take this tarot card by this psychic, this kind of stuff or whatever. I mean, I really bought into it growing up. It felt like it was real. It felt like it was helping me. I created friend groups around these topics and the ideas. I rejected friend groups if you didn't believe what I believe, this kind of stuff. But ultimately, after some period of time, I really came to the conclusion that these things actually weren't helping me at all. They were just furthering my distraction and not really offering me anything tangible or useful. And I think that's a point to make about this stuff. These things are really kind of culturally significant, especially nowadays. I mean, you got social media influencers everywhere that are popping up saying, charge you 333 per hour just to talk to me, and they'll post all these sorts of videos saying, you need to heal yourself in this particular way, and here's my course. And the amount of industrial and commercialization of the spiritual movement is absolutely insane. And you'll typically find that associated with the New Age movement. I mean, I used to live in Sedona, Arizona for about 4 years, and that's all it is commercialized spirituality. People are always trying to sell me a higher self, a higher spiritual experience. And often you'll find that in attempting to do so, people will also try to sell you that you're not enough right now. That's why you need the upgrade. So I think as time went on, after doing all these various practices, whether it's Kundalini yoga, whether it's playing with different crystals and reading different books, all the books, read them, all the occult stuff, I know about it, all the conspiracies. I'm probably more of a conspiracy nut than you. I definitely am. All of these things, I started to realize that they were just flooding my mind, I think. If that's the right way to think about it, they were just putting symbols and ideas and structures into my mind that further limited and parameterized what I could do or not do based upon if it aligned with some nested object that required a bunch of other things, which maybe I didn't even know yet existed. And so oftentimes it's so funny how the spiritual journey is actually really rooted in, I guess, self discipline, but in a way anchored against you because there's always a future version of you that can exist now. And so you're trying to be that. And oftentimes that future version of you feels like an even more constricted, more limited self. And so you have to really hone in a certain way. Otherwise, you're not going to be let into the kingdom of heaven or whatever. All these things kind of really just merge together when you think about it. all these ideas. It just depends on whatever theme or context you need to view this stuff from. And that really kind of gets me to my other point as well. You see, when you're looking for yourself, which is what I'd say that I was when I was younger, when you're looking for yourself, you have to recognize that that's the phase of life that you're in. You're in the looking for myself phase. It means you haven't found it. And when you find it, well, then what would that actually be like? And now I would say, after I found myself, I don't have to look for it because it's right here. And once it's right there, once you have it right now, everything that you had to do in order to find it becomes canceled. It's like null and void. It's a thing that doesn't suspend you anymore. It doesn't help you. It's almost like it doesn't even exist. And I think that most people that are in the new age movement right now, they're just about to have that breakthrough where they realize, oh, this is just like one big, it's not like a psyop per se, because all these things have partial truths. It's something that I'm just kind of wasting my time because I'm so focused on finding myself. I could be designing myself or creating myself or doing something more with my time. And that's another thing, really, when we think about it. If you're so focused on trying to work on your healing or trying to resolve your trauma or pick apart some part of you and deconstruct something which isn't quite how you want it to be, and so you got to change it and study and learn how to change or fix it, you're still in that process of finding myself, changing myself, fixing myself. And so by there in that nature, you're not at where you are because you're still in the phase of looking away from things that you actually could be right now, but you think you still have to go back and do something. It's very weird how the states are so definitive that way, how like if you're finding yourself right now, it means you haven't found yourself, where if you found yourself, then you don't have to find yourself. It's kind of strange like that, and that really becomes more and more true as you go. Now, the thing is, all these spiritual influencers, man, they're really good at their marketing, aren't they? It's like, hey, you're not yourself right now, and I could help you, and buy my course or sign up to get a coaching call from me for 333 per hour, per week, per whatever it is. They're very good at telling you that you're not good enough right now in this mystical language of talking about how your soul wanted this right now. And if you're watching this video right now, it means that you're about to awaken and you found me for a reason type shit. And, none of that stuff is true. Because once you start to realize that you are not the creator of your reality, because I hate that, but once you start to realize that you are this independent force from everything outside around you, you'll actually start to see how connected things really are and how unconnected certain things are. So much of this talk about how we're all one, all of us are one together, we all just need to love and light. And if we do that, the world will heal and there will be no pain and suffering, everything's going to be fine. The thing is about this, though, man, that I've really found, the more you are able to fully embody yourself completely, I have found that people actually don't like you for that. The more you rise up, the more you grow, the more you are yourself and who you want to be, it really seems like a lot of people aren't going to support you in that. And I know it's insane, but that's what it is. Because other people, they aren't confident in themselves. And so when they see other people rise, they assume that they're worse than them because that's what the mental structure that they need to have you be within their mind, because you're the bad guy. If I perceive that you're doing better than me, I'm going to make you lower than me. And so that's such a common pattern to happen just in humans, but also in the spiritual community as well. You'll get things where, if you don't believe certain things that I believe, it means that you're a lower level being. The thing about this like levels system is that, again, it points to something which is true. There are genuinely levels to the game, and there's different levels to which you can actually say things are true or not true, depending upon if, probably another set of conclusions as well. The thing about spirituality is it is defined in a way, it is parameterized. There is this optimal form you can be, but if you don't have the access to that certain level of knowledge where you can be truthful about what that is, until you've ascended to that level where you can actually be truthful about it, then you'll kind of just be in confusion and think everything else is lower than you. And so it's a paradox in a way of how these things are true at their basic form, but everything is so nuanced that you have to get to the right spot with it within yourself where it actually makes sense. And until you reach that point, you're just delusional. And so I think that this new age spirituality thing, to the degree of how much you are bought into it, shows your level of delusion. But it's not like that's a bad thing per se, because when you think about it, like I said before, when I was younger, I was really into it. And so, again, these things are just phases and representations of your level of growth right now. It's just where you find yourself. And if you're a young person right now interested in the new age, guess what? You're probably like me. And 5 years from now, you'll figure it out and you'll do something else with your time instead of just trying to resolve your traumas or figure yourself out. Like you'll get to a point where life becomes so much more interesting when you're doing something, probably something physical, something tangible, rather than always trying to architect yourself internally so that you adjust to each space in the correct way and don't have to judge yourself, even though sometimes the very thing that you're supposed to be doing right now is literally judging yourself. And that's where we start to get into the differences between male versions of spirituality and female versions of spirituality. You see, as a male, because that's what I am, you can only really be a male or a female. And that's a whole other thing which has invaded the spiritual community. But when you're a male, there's something really special about just feeling down. And it's almost like kind of a beautiful moment to be like, the world sucks. No one likes me. No one wants me here. I'm a straight white male and no one cares about me. And it's like, yeah, that's true. And when you find out that that's true, when you find out you're not wanted in this world, no one likes you, nothing's going to be handed to you, everything sucks, you got to really grow up and do stuff for real. It puts you in the position, the power to change your life. And that's exactly what you're wanting to do in the first place. That's the thing which will actually change your life, is you feeling how deeply real that is. And oftentimes you'll find a lot of males in the spiritual communities as a type of disguise to just try to find a partner because if I'm spiritual, if I talk the language and I know all the ins and outs and all the love and light shit, it kind of pre-selects me into the group that I'm not a threat. So, you could be with me. And it's so typical for males to get into spirituality exclusively for that reason. That was never my reason. Like I said, I had a dark shadow realm figure around me that I was kind of like with spirituality, it's just a theme. It's just the language that you want to use to internalize and build your own inner library of your own self. It's not that what you're saying to yourself is even necessarily real because words are, words. And I'd like to think I use words well, but words in essence are just creating a capture over top of form. And the form itself is what's actually the thing we're talking about, which is usually translated in just energetic exchange, not through words. So the basis of your spiritual journey should ultimately get you to the point where you don't have to necessarily listen to words to feel the energy. And once you can feel the energy, that's, I'd say, is a pretty good success. Once you can do that, it's going to help you because so many of the experiences in your life require you to have that basic level of energetic alignment within yourself to determine should I go this way or should I go that way? True or false, right? Not this like three-way in between sort of everything is everything tri-union stuff. No, just literally embrace the duality of reality, yes or no, and it will help you really set yourself straight in a way. I mean, I'm kind of being ironic and funny with this stuff, but I'm serious about this. You have to get to a point within yourself where there are clear definitions and borders of yes or no within yourself. And the more yeses and no, and the more things in which you found out who you are, it's like you're building your own, I guess, structure around you, which is your actual form, right? You can kind of imagine if you've only explored one topic of yourself and you've determined, all right, yes or no on this, you have a very limited self experience on what you've actually done. I mean, all right, you've explored one or two topics. I mean, cool, dude, whatever. You don't really know that much about what else you got to know about. And that's the thing about reality. You don't yet know what you don't yet know. The more I know I don't know. And it's like that for everything. And once you get to the point where you can see the reality for exactly how it is, That's when you know you don't need a spiritual practice. And once you know you don't need a spiritual practice, it's like a new level to the game unlocks. You find out what you really are. Because when you find out what you really are, you realize you're just this uncontained, formless form. Your whole screen of reality is this parallax, dynamic, functional consciousness unit, and it basically is your command center for experiencing the game. And once it's like that, you don't need a spiritual practice. You don't need to watch YouTube videos from some guru teaching you some ancient yoga technique that he learned in the 1600s from whatever, who, whatever. It doesn't become about the past. It doesn't become about ancient. It becomes about new, right now. What can I do right now? All the information is accessible to you each day. There's more and more information collectively that we're building. It's like we're building out our own internal libraries for all of us to share, and that's what the internet basically has turned into. It's the internet system of consciousness. There's now more information today than there was in the past. So stop going to the past to get these philosophical and deep spiritual answers because they're not there. And if you resonate with them at that level, it's because you're not actually adjusted and tuned with the times. There is so much spiritual information that I gather every single day when I'm just sitting here on my computer and coding in JavaScript. I'm just like, wow, that's amazing how that fits with that. And see, you have to start to get to a point in your consciousness where you see the beauty in it all. You see how everything works. And maybe you don't understand it, but you at least see how the puzzle pieces together. And when you can do that, you don't need a theme. You don't need a spiritual practice. You don't need some way to think about life or some repository of information someone else gave you about how they discovered their self, because that's how they did it. How are you going to do it? And all this stuff really starts to link back to that basic point, I guess, is you're attempting to want to build yourself based upon how someone else did it as a form of security because you don't actually feel like you could do it yourself. You don't believe it's within you right now to do it. So I've got to read up and learn about how someone else did it. I got to post on Reddit, hey, I'm having this spiritual problem. Can you help me with this problem I'm having? When it's a basic generic problem everyone has. You have to go through the whole process yourself. And no one's really going to help you through it. And the people who are going to help you through it are going to be people like me in this video telling you that you need to do it and not buy my course or pay 333 per hour to have me coach you on how to do it. You have to do it yourself completely. You have to deep dive within who you are right now and figure out what is that thing I'm really not trying to think about? What's that thing that I'm really not trying to feel? And what thing am I doing instead as it relate to not actually feel that thing, but trying to think I'm doing it, but I'm not doing it? You have to get to that point with your reality where you just see yourself almost from the point of as if you're like a third person character overlooking yourself, right? The observer state. You have to observe yourself, observing the self, and make decisions from that point of view. And when you do, I think it's so freeing. I think that really goes back into this topic of the whole gender thing. There's all this talk these days about you can be different genders. You can be a male and a female at the same time. You can be the opposite of what you are. You can be attracted to the same thing of what you are. You could be, you know, all these different variations of what this stuff is. And perhaps this is like another video altogether. It probably is. But when you think about it, the way people see you, you're never going to see yourself that way. And that's almost the purpose of the internal versus the external. We can see out there, but there's this vast terrain within you inside the internal world, which is where all the fun stuff happens. These days, we're caught up so much in what new outfit this person's got on, who's following who's doing what with whatever, what brand deals, sponsorships, all this stuff, material, material, material. Even the spiritual community is so caught up in the materialism, it's actually insane. All of this looking at the external world and avoiding the internal world. As long as you're just looking within, as long as you're seeing yourself from within, you're going to be fine. As long as you're seeing yourself from within and you're not thinking you're going to be tortured till the end of time if you don't find your final form, you're going to be fine. because everything else is temporary. And I actually believe that we're in this really great period of time right now where it's as if we're all going to kind of rapidly ascend, hopefully, or at least it feels that way. I don't know for sure, but we're definitely in this new age of potential. There's a lot of potential right now. And with that, I think that we'll see great things. Great things in terms of helping people find their spiritual purpose and do it for real. And, there's a lot of problems that come with the spiritual stuff. I've seen it all. I've talked about it all, like I said. But ultimately, with spirituality, it's kind of one of those topics that once you get to a certain point with it, you don't really want to talk about it anymore. All of this ties into also the psychedelic movement. Everyone and their mom's doing psychedelics right now, or trying to talk about how their psychedelic trip, they've seen this thing that no one else has ever seen, and it was so crazy and all this kind of stuff. And after doing psychedelics over 300 times, I kind of got to a point with it where it's like, well, I'm probably not going to ever see anything that I haven't seen before. And again, I've even done a recent video about this. I don't think they even helped me at all either. It's just like you get to a certain point where when nothing external can really help you, you start to have to be forced to look exclusively internal. And when you look just internal, you'd be surprised what you find there because you can actually start to build your own internal tools and build systems within your whole operating system of reality and rely upon those structures. And you can't really cheat yourself to, I guess, spiritual growth. You can open some doors, but as soon as you no longer have the substance in your body, those doors close. And if you don't think so, it means you haven't done them enough to realize that that's what happens. So the psychedelics are a whole other topic as well. And so, with that being said, I think that this concludes the main topic today of this whole spirituality psyop thing. Not all of spirituality is a psyop, but I mean, once you get to a certain point with it, it definitely starts to feel that way when you reflect back on your journey. And what I found is some of the most powerful spiritual people that I know have basically all come to the same conclusions, basically all of what I just said today. And that kind of points to something that there's this universal structure to what you're going to step into closer to your final form. You really will start to feel, oh, I feel that too. You feel that same way. Oh, we're all like connected in this way. There is this oneness in a sense. But I think that this sort of oneness that's happening in the New Age circle is a inversion of the actual oneness because there's all about love and light. And in a way, they're sort of deluded to thinking that that's all what matters. You just need to love and light, just be who you are, be who everyone else is. It's all fine. We're all together in this thing and no judgment. It's all whatever, like this completely stateless, everything is everything. But the true people that I've known who are actually spiritual gangsters, they realized long time ago that that stuff ain't real. You have to go through this tremendous period of darkness because that's how the light comes out within you. And if you've never had this darkness within you come out to then embrace the light, then you really don't know what you're talking about. And, there's even people that probably say to just sit in the darkness for an even longer extended period of time. And that's true spirituality, and that's not right either. What you'll find is awakening to yourself, if you do it right, because I think there's a right way to do it. It's a very nuanced approach, and you'll often hold very paradoxical and contradictory perspectives all the time. So many of my ideas only exist within the context of, well, it's because of this as well, but then in another condition it cancels out, and so many things are basically like that. It's completely paradoxical. It's stuff that doesn't even make any sense, which is why this topic of spirituality, it's kind of the topic that's in a way we've commercialized and have turned into an industry, and now it's a booming movement and everyone's talking about it. But really, it's one of those topics that has always been remained as only contained within these close circles. To not really talk about this stuff. It's not really something you should talk about. And I think that that is kind of true because all these things can get just sort of muddled up into a whole other thing and it can start to deviate from what it actually is. I mean, the amount of people that I've now interacted with that, type in and go to ascensionglossary.com and like memorize each word and then start to use that language and adopt that into their whole mentality and the way they phrase their language and start to identify with this lost city in the sky or wherever else, that all this big super cybernetic futuristic war is happening in these different dimensions, and when we go to sleep, we're battling, the sky demons or something, and we may not win this time, so it's a battle for the ages kind of thing. The amount of people that I've run into that like genuinely believe this stuff, just read a couple words and start to adopt it into their system and frame of reality, but end up just being absolute clowns, is insane to me. And I think that just shows that humans were so malleable. We want a purpose. We want something to like kind of dive into and be like, yeah, this is my new identity. This is what I'm comfortable with. And but the thing is, you have to understand that that's what it is. It's your identity. It's what you're identifying with now. And ultimately, when you can no longer identify with anything, when you don't have to identify with your gender, you don't have to identify with all this material stuff, and you can just be this orb of light, this screen of reality, localized here right now, and that's all that you are. You'd be surprised what is going to happen to you if you just are that. So this concludes on how I think that the New Age movement is the real agenda, and we'll see more and more of how that actually is true in the future. But again, ultimately, all these things are kind of just harmless, right? That's the whole trick about all of it, is that even if you start to think that you're being sold into this new lie and, oh, now I'm in the New Age movement. Now Raymond says I got to get out of it because it's a psyop, and so now what do I do? Like that's the actual psyop. Is like you guess what? You can be in the New Age today and tomorrow and next year, and it's fine. It really doesn't matter. It's just there's always the more optimal path and the least optimal path, and a whole spectrum and variations in between, but ultimately there's this or there's that, isn't there?